Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today it comes at us from Dosenprügel, one of my all-time faves in realms near to power metal, epic 11-minute ride with three outstanding vocalists carrying the torch of magic in music. Also provided me with the names of the vocalists in here. We have the vocalist from Blind Guardian, the vocalist from this band, Avantasia, and Jorn Lande, from presumably a band of his own name, it looks like. Let's dive into this. We're looking at Avantasia's The Raven Child, which is the longest track on this 2019 album, Moonglow. I forgot to fix that. I actually started recording this already, and 3 minutes and 45 seconds into the track, I realized I wasn't recording. So there's still an entire 8 minutes almost of music I haven't heard, but I have heard this beginning. Let's dive into it. I'll try to give many of the similar thoughts I had, and there was a couple of things I missed. It'll be nice to have a second chance at checking them out too. Let's dive into The Raven Child from Avantasia. I just double checked. I am recording this time.
Mother Moon, cast your spell on these fields. Let the boughs paint ghostly shades on the trail to a different world where the castle looks out.
The violin and cello coming in on either side.
Where I'm given all the love that I crave, not afraid of the rising
Flute coming in center left.
my brittle soul. Cold is the wind.
Just a gorgeous instrumentation throughout all this. Very folk.
Rushing on, and nothing will remain. There's no glory on the lost journey.
Very cinematic. Oh, I love the tambourine back there. Oh, it's every third time. Very heavy metal, but the guitar sounds great with the... Is that a tuba? There's something very buzzy in the backgrounds. You know, I kind of also get like a hair metal vibe off of this. Very functional drum beat.
Looking down from this pure cup of heaven.
Very segmented here, the folk orchestration versus the metal.
Noise and decree and the crazy empty eyes.
I really like the way that he enunciates things and he shapes words.
In my imagination,
It's a bit over the top, very theatric, but it works for what the song's doing. Waiting. A lot of really cool syllabic phrasing going on. just such a big sound. Ooh, getting a little bit of a Dio vibe from the vocals now. Yeah. There's the power metal. Having the guitar mimic that rhythm back after the vocals. The back and forth between the two guitars, but the lead one is doing the same line that the vocals were. Kind of a motif through that section.
Sweet scent of rain, they're calling you, astounding how it is not the same it used to be when you're compelled behind the cradle on your own. The tolling of the bell, is there anyone to tell?
Oh, get that belt out.
What they wanna say? Voices go on down and talk and talk to me, but their talks won't permeate throughout my soul. In your altered state of mind, in vain you're chasing lies. Yeah, your master in his frown, denial of the crown of creation. You're made to think you are a fire in the dark, for the fool's gonna find his way, but I'd rather never get away.
This is just a fun chorus.
And fiery alive man, a fire in the dark, for the fool's gonna find his way, but I'd rather never get away. Is it love that glows in fiery alive man? Story-eyed, living a lie, lonely heart in an endless rain.
The guitar starting on the same pitch as the vocals. Really nice baton pass right there.
Light breeze and the crowns of the willows, green fields as if the day was on the wane, grow faint and attain to perfection.
I love how the vocals and guitar are in the same range, and there's a lot of overlap. They have their own melodies, but they do line up every once in a while on key notes.
Like the willow, meant to give way to the odor of the storm, won't leave a mold in the marsh of the ages. A tight chevalier.
Oh, that time they didn't. The last 3 times through, they've always lined up on that key second beat. Oh, it's beat 3 is what it is.
Time flows to become a month of nothing for a broken soldier of fortune.
Rhythmic and texture vocals after so many melodic vocals. Very nice change of pace. utilizing the same rhythm as those low-end choir vocals from previously. Okay, this is an energy we haven't heard at all. I like the baton passing here between the vocalists. He says like a raven child, and all I heard was like a rainbow in the dark. Oh man. His voice though does remind me of Dio though. It has that darkness alongside just the really high pitched tones. He has a really warm timbre to his voice. He pulls it back a little bit, puts that grit into it. I think the technique probably is pretty similar to Dio's. But yeah, just it works so well for this too. Like, I don't know if he's purposefully channeling Dio for that or if that's just where his gritty clean landed and it just happens to be in a similar type of delivery that Dio does. But it's good. It is a good pick for this sound. So what is this though? Is it power metal? Is it symphonic metal? Is it hair metal? It's not that. There was that one part though, towards the beginning that did remind me of some hair metal stuff, but no, I think I would probably put this cleanly into symphonic heavy metal. It does lean into some power metal ideas at times, but it's a secondary component to me. And I think that's an interesting concept is symphonic heavy metal because I don't think I've heard that before. Symphonic metal, when we bring that up, bands like Epica and Nightwish, After Forever, the stereotypical sound of progressive metal. The metal side tends to be a bit more modern. Sort of that 90s metal sound, maybe something leaning closer to a hard rock, a lighter metal, um, progressive metal when we look at bands like Nightwish, um, but not so much of that 80s metal sound with symphonic elements. I don't know why that is. I don't know why so much symphonic metal leans towards a more modern sound. We don't have any melodic hard rock. We don't have any melodic Ozzy Osbourne style early doom metal stuff, or Black Sabbath, sorry, not Ozzy. Um, like symphonic metal has a specific sound and it's more modern. And so this sounds interesting to my ears. Wait, is power metal symphonic heavy metal? I think it is, but like it's not. There's something very specific about this song that feels like Dosen Prugel had mentioned. It's in the realm of power metal, but it's not. Something's missing, and I don't know what that something is. And I think it's a small spice that just didn't get tossed in here, and so it doesn't feel like it's in that realm of power metal. If anyone has any thoughts on that, I'm really curious. I'm gonna let it mull around. Maybe I'll pick back up on it towards the end of the video and have a hypothesis about it. But power metal is just symphonic heavy metal, I think. The more that I'm trying to remember some power stuff. And this is symphonic heavy metal, and yet I don't think it fits the bill. I don't know. Genre aside, what is this track doing? It's it's jumping between two extremes a majority of the time. We have our folk orchestral stuff, flutes, strings, brass. I'd say orchestral percussion in a couple of places. I do know we have a drum kit in a lot of this track, but I do feel like I heard timpanis at times. Um, I don't know if I necessarily heard a symphonic bass drum, but I did hear some bass kicks that felt bigger, though that could have just been something done on the production side of things. It's a lot easier to produce well, I should say it's a lot cheaper to produce a foot bass drum, a floor bass drum, to make it sound like a full-sized orchestral one, than to go out and buy or maybe rent a full-size orchestral bass drum just for one track. Or maybe rent it for a few days if you're doing it for the whole album, It's probably more efficient to just EQ it up. Um, there's some harp in here too, wasn't there? Just a lot of sounds. And it's all done in a very classical style where the instruments tend to have placements across the sound sphere. Certain instruments are always over here, certain ones are always over here. And in the spectrum, it's not just center, left, and right. We have a wide range of things, or a wide range of areas for instruments to be. This type of spatiality is also present in the composition of the track, where many instruments tend to have a single role and maybe even just a single riff, if you want to go in metal terms, ostinato, if you want to go in classical terms, a lick, if you want to go in jazz terms. Uh, there's no jazz in here, but I always like how they're like, yeah, man, that's a cool lick. And like everyone else has like cool names for it, the riff, the ostinato, and then just like the lick. Ah, I kind of want to look that up. Why is it called a riff? Like ostinato probably has Latin roots. The riff, at least riff already like has a terminology that's adjacent to it, like riffing on something. But like the lick, licking things, like why did Jazz Cats pick that? Anyways, I got off topic there. If you're new to the channel, that happens often. I apologize. No, I don't. It's fun. What are we talking about? Oh, yeah. Little ideas that they'll do, and that's it. Like a flute will have like a like a little like rundown or something, and then that's it. They don't have to come back again for another 8 bars until the next section, until 2 sections later. It's a very classical way of writing music rather than rock or metal, which is like where everybody plays all the time or nobody plays. It's like when you want those moments of silence, just nobody plays for a beat or two. But like if somebody's playing, usually everybody's playing. And classical just has a very different approach. We hear a lot of that in here. Instruments can pop in and out throughout the entire track. I find it to be quite dynamic, not just in its timbre range, the different types of sounds that we're getting, but volume range, atmospheric range, emotional range. it's just a song that is constantly changing and evolving. There's new things being thrown at me. Absolutely love it for that. And a lot of that comes from this classical side and some of the folkier composition that comes in at times. It's just very wonderfully done. Now, what's interesting is I keep bringing up the folk side. I think our very first section was very folky. We had some tambourine, we had some very light, it sounded like hand drums almost. It didn't sound like, like a drumstick against a snare or something like that. Just like a doom, just something that you would play with your hands, a nice light sound to it, bouncy rather than abrasive. I feel like, especially in rock and metal, drum kits tend to have like an attack to them. It's this point of impact where the very narrow drumstick hits the drum head, and it's a pointed sound. Whereas like hand drums, especially with like wooden drum heads, just have more of a rounder sound to them. They're less combative in a way. I heard some of that in here. We had the tambourine. This was the folkier side of things, but we also had a different side to the writing, even outside of the metal, which is more of an orchestral cinematic approach to things, such as when the brass and the cellos come in, especially the tubas there, and we got the boom, and like these massive tones, not really melodic, not really ornamental, just powerhouse ideas. Um, these big drum sounds usually also paired with the guitars. A lot of these sections did have more rock and metal elements in them, but it was more of a cinematic approach to utilizing this wide array of instrumentation that they had in their track. Now, aside from these two, though, we also had the metal. We had riffs from the guitars, the bass followed along, usually with either leaning into the same riff or just laying down some pedal tones, much like the drums, also being a bit more on the simple side, a very functional drum playing throughout most of this. There were a couple of really nice fills, but for the most part, it was much like we saw at the beginning, bass, snare, just really laying down the tempo, the beat, and being that metronome for everybody else, which makes sense in a track like this when you're going to have 20, 30 instruments at any given time. Everybody kind of gets simpler ideas to make way for all of everything that's happening, and all the simple ideas stack up into larger ones. So it's a smart way to go about writing something like this. If you're going to have a lot of stuff and you're not sure how to make sure everything has room, just make sure some things are functional. You need a foundation. That's some chord progression. Give some instruments some chords. They're not going to do anything else, right? It's not complex, but it doesn't need to be. Very efficient writing. We have the riffs, and that pretty much outlines the majority of this track. We move from these highs to the lows to the we move from the highs to the lows, back to highs, back to lows, each of them sort of doing their own thing while sitting within one of these three realms. Either a densely laid folk style writing, a densely laid orchestral cinematic style writing, or full on metal focusing on catchy riffs and heavy drumming. I don't really think we had anything other than those three. How they changed things up was the ordering of things, how long we were in them. Basic pacing and structure is what kept the song dynamic along those lines. But even when we look at multiple folk sections, multiple orchestral sections, multiple metal sections, they all are different in their own way. I think they did a great job at keeping the song feeling diverse from start to finish. Usually with 11-minute tracks like this, I tend to find myself getting not bored, but finding less and less nuances to poke and prod for while I'm actively listening to things. And so, it's usually only the more eclectic bands, Between the Buried and Me, or Car Bomb, or, even Dream Theater. Progressive bands, where they're constantly doing new things, that longer tracks tend to be a little bit kinder to me. But for primarily doing the same thing throughout this entire track, I found it to be engaging and interesting from start to finish, and the 11 minutes went by fast, which is a huge bonus for me. Now, Of course, it was mentioned in the comments. I have to bring it up. There are three vocalists here, and the vocal work in here is phenomenal, which I tend to expect with anything symphonic. There are very few symphonic metal bands out there who don't have great vocals. If you're bringing strings into your writing, if you're bringing orchestral elements into your writing, if you're bringing classical composition into your writing, you tend to also have a vocalist who can keep up with all of that. Sort of just this unspoken rule. I think it's why so many or symphonic metal vocalists tend to have a very wide vibrato, tend to be classically trained, and also tend to dip their toes in opera, or maybe come from opera even. You tend to want that experience and skill set if your composition and the rest of your musicians are up to that level too. And so it's no surprise to me that all three of these vocalists are extremely competent. They have fantastic presence, fantastic body to their voices, great vibrato and control. We heard a couple of different styles, whether it's belting or more of a comfortable, clean, or maybe a little bit of grit in there. What I did find interesting though was I had trouble differentiating the three vocalists on timbre alone. There's one vocalist who certainly sounds a bit different than the other two, though still a similar coloring to it all. And the other two, I think, were completely indistinguishable to me because, as far as I'm concerned, I only heard two vocalists throughout here. I would love to catch a live video of this, or even just a video that has text of the name of the person who's singing, so I can just get a visual aid to it to have a note, hey, this other person's singing now, because honestly, I didn't hear that much difference between them, which is entirely interesting on its own. It's very rare to get a bunch of vocalists together that all sound similar, and I think that's a really cool. I don't think that's what they went out of their way to do here, but I think it's an interesting thing. And it's also entirely my ears as well. It's quite possible that the more I listen to all three of these vocalists, the more I understand their nuances and begin to hear the different, less apparent colorings that differentiate their voices. But they're all definitely in the realm of heavy metal and remind me of a lot of vocalists from that era and genre, which I think is cool too, to see that in 2019 people are still utilizing this style of vocal. It is not typically my favorite. I find it to be more technically impressive than emotively connecting. It also tends to use more back of the throat placement, so it has a bit of a rounder, fuller, bassier feel to it. And as I've mentioned a lot in the past, I'm just a huge fan of forward placed vocals. I think the difference between this and like pop punk music, it's a very big difference in where the vocals are placed, and it gives it a very different coloring and feel. As much as I've tried to get into vocal stylings like this, it just never clicks with me. I don't hate it. It's not something I actively dislike. It just never connects with me. It sort of just is. I'm neutral on it. Even like Dio, I tend to like listening to Dio the band more so than Dio the vocalist. I think they write great songs. I love the melodies, but the vocals are just something that sort of just, it's fine. I don't mind it. As much as I love Dio's track, Rainbow in the Dark is just it's a banger. We're gonna use some modern terminology about an older track. But yeah, just for some reason the style just bounces off of me. The belts are technically impressive. The range on these guys is phenomenal. Like I said, the control, the breath support, the vibrato, all of it is just perfectly done. I just don't connect with it for whatever reason. I'm going to check out some lyrics and then we're going to wrap this one up. There's actually two things I wanted to talk about before we hit the lyrics. They're going to be a bit quicker so we can get going, especially since I don't want to forget what I want to talk about with the lyrics. But I do think they are important. One is the general flow and why did I think about these words earlier? The general flow of transitions between ideas, the multiple use of callbacks, of baton passing, of call and response, of harmony, of counterpoint, of just general use of motif and theme throughout this. I feel like in so many places I call that, oh, this is that thing from earlier, or oh, this instrument's doing what that instrument did just last bar, and stuff like that. It makes the song feel connected and cohesive, like it's a living, breathing evolution of ideas rather than just a series of concepts. We came up with this riff and we came up with that atmosphere and then we just played them back to back. No, no, we have ideas here, but they're not just present here. It's a core part of the song. You will hear them later. Another instrument will pick them up. There's a rhythm that we're going to play here. 3 minutes from now, a different instrument's going to pick that rhythm up and put a melody to it. And there's so many fantastic ideas like this throughout the entire track. I'm sure I missed plenty of them. I picked up at least 4 or 5, and that's on a first time listen. How much did I miss? So, yeah, I'm just really happy with that. I'm sure that lends itself well into why the song felt as cohesive and went by as quickly as it did. I tend to find songs that jump from idea to idea to feel a bit longer for me simply because I can't find that cohesion between it all. It's not a story, it's a series of vignettes. And while that's a perfectly fine way to craft a song, it's a perfectly fine way to craft a story too. It just typically isn't my cup of tea. It has to hit me well. Whereas something like this doesn't have to, I don't hold it up to as high of a standard because I'm already on board for this type of composition. The other thing that I wanted to bring up that I forgot was the whole choir thing that happened in the middle with that really low choir working in that textural rhythmic area. I thought that was awesome because a lot of this song was focused on harmony, melody, and ornamentation, which is melodic in nature usually. There aren't really a lot of rhythmic motifs going on in this track. Not that I picked up on anyways, and to hear them come in with this, and for all I know, it was a callback to something I missed earlier that I read on an entirely melodic level, and then to have this section feel as gritty and powerful as it is, because at least to my ears, it's lacking in the melodic area, which is something the song hasn't really done. So now my ears have perked up. This is unique. And then to hear that get carried over into something else, again, the whole transition callback motif thing that they've got going on. I think one of the vocalists picked it up and used that rhythm but put a brand new melody to it. Like, it was just so well executed. The song, the whole pacing and flow of it is just fantastic. Even if I didn't enjoy the music itself, I hated every moment of it for whatever reason, the pure structure of it is so compositionally sound. I don't think I would have much negative to say about it because it's well constructed on the foundational level of things, how ideas work together, how one act leads to the next, that I mean, it could have been full of dissonance, and I still think I would have really enjoyed it. Now, onto the lyrics. There's a lot of them. It's 14 minutes long. There are very few segments without vocals to them. It's a conceptual story. I think it might even have more to do with the entire album, as the album art leans into the visuals that I'm getting from the lyrics here, and many of the tracks seem to follow along with ideas that I think would work well in a conceptual story for this small chapter here. Y'all let me know if I'm wrong on that, but it's the vibe I'm getting here. It is about the Raven Child, the protagonist of this story. Something I didn't pick up from the lyrics, but I am getting from the annotation, is that it's a homunculus, or a homunculi, which is like a doll that a soul has been put into, or that a soul could be put into to be brought alive, something along those lines. Anyways, this Raven Child is trying to find their place in the world. We open up with the first couple of verses, kind of coming into the world, first impressions, first things they see. There are wild groves, sacred grounds, fade to vastness, Mother Moon cast your spell on these fields. It's very whimsically written, but it's about looking out and seeing all this beauty, feeling the winds. We look, verse 2 says, looking down from this pure cup of heaven, presumably in a castle that was mentioned last verse, it says, onto the ocean of white that drowns all the noise and decree and the craze in empty eyes. Wide-eyed, I'd lost in my imagination a dream of love. As we go on, we begin to see that as much as this raven child finds the beauty in the world, they find equal beauty in the darkness, in the shadows. It's about trying to find that midpoint of appreciating that beauty can come in all shapes and sizes. That what might look ugly from one perspective can be beautiful from another, and as the raven child attempts to understand what any of this means, having just been born into the world or something along the lines of that, I think it matches really well with the track, which is beautiful from start to finish, whether we are in the more pensive, serene folk stuff, or the more cinematic, bombastic sections, or the driving metal stuff. The song is beautiful from every angle, whether it's looking for something lighter or something darker. There's probably some cool things that line up in here as well, such as the beginning, speaking about being in wild groves, on sacred ground, looking at Mother Moon, and that being a folkier style of writing. It's possible that the instrument choices line up with the lyrical settings as well. I would have to give it another listen to hear the lyrics against what music is being played with it in any given section to see if that's true, but at least it feels like it is from the beginning. The ending is pretty large and bombastic, and it is somebody telling the child to fly with your fiery eyes and escape all from below, to spread your wings and go. Which is that levity, that big triumphant ending. It's about leaving. It's about the beginning of a journey. Yeah, it all comes together quite well. I think that's going to wrap this up. Those are my thoughts on Avantasia's Moonglow. Just a song that is cohesive from start to finish, ground to ceiling. Everything is designed to work and benefit every other part of the song. Those are my thoughts on it. What are yours? Let me know your thoughts, perspectives, opinions, anything like that down in the comments section. Let me know if you think I'm on the right track with some of this, if you think I'm totally wrong. Give me your own ideas on what the song means or represents, any of that stuff. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you to this menu right here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. We'll continue on with this week's theme of spectacular endings. This is pretty good, too. It kind of fits with the theme unintentionally. That'll be at 5 p.m. tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.